The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Friday, September 7th, Saturday, September 8th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, heading into the weekend, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network and Deep Talk Radio, and we say hello to each and every one of you. And if you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, tickets are on sale for the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio, September 28th through 30th. Yes, we are just about 3 weeks away. We want to see you up here at beautiful 108 Mile Ranch. Go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference and get your tickets right now. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses, so go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe to the channel today. It's the first Friday of the month, which means it's time once again for the ET Connection with R. Keith Andrews. This is the night where we get to talk about all things alien, and Keith is our regular show expert on this topic. This is an audience participation show, so if you are in one of the chat rooms or on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, please put your questions in capital letters. Tonight, with Keith, we are going to get into a little bit of disclosure, and not even from a human side. Let's take a look at it from the alien side and what could happen with them and the impact it could have on mankind. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, it's Faux News Friday with Everett Themer on the encounter from the SOR newsroom. Mr. R. Keith Andrews, how you doing, my friend?
Not bad at all. How's yourself?
Doing very, very well, my friend. How about you?
Well, it's been a strange week. Let's put it that way. Things
What's
are
going on?
definitely-
What's made it strange?
Well, all in all, if I look at just the mundane level, my world has gone completely upside down. But from the alien side of it, if you will, I'm getting an awful pile more activity around the perimeter, not just of the planet, but quite frankly in the solar system itself, because of the number of changes that are taking place that people are paying attention to or causing. I'm not entirely certain which one is holding more dominance just yet. Well, when you think about it, with the amount of, okay, let's try from the English standpoint. When you look at the way that society is right now, society is at a very exciting point in its evolution, especially from a sociological standpoint. In other words, what the off-worlders are looking at with how mankind is evolving, what is going on the political level, and how all of that is going to transpire, how it's all going to unfold. People have looked at the disclosure side of things from where humans are standing. And, people go, well, when are the aliens going to show themselves, and why don't they step in and help with the mess that we've created? This sort of thing. But few people are paying attention to the other side of it, which is why the off-worlders don't just come right out and say, hey, here I am. And if you think about it, that's where the real catch comes in.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I can see that, my friend. I can see where you're going with that, because from an alien point of view is what you were saying. And we're going to get very deep into this tonight on the show. What you're saying is there is two different ways that need to be looked at with disclosure. One from the humanity side, and the second one from the extraterrestrial side.
Exactly. Because from the human side, humans understand sort of how humans, or at least how they themselves see it. But people aren't looking too terribly much at what it is that the off-worlders are looking at. Let's take a look at the obvious issue. Mankind is it's an infantile race, comparatively speaking. We're just getting into interplanetary travel. Okay, we're talking between Earth, the Moon, Mars. Mankind has gotten a lot further than what the general population realizes, but it's still interplanetary. And with that in mind, man's aggressive nature is going with him. Okay, plus, of course, the curiosity side. Now, when we take a look at that aspect, at just that curious, aggressive nature, the off-worlders look at this and go, okay, mankind has a staggering level of self-survival. Okay, you put any number of people, you can have a war going on. The moment, between humans, the moment you have a common threat, whether it's an alien showing up or a natural disaster, mankind forgets all about its differences and pulls everything to pull together, to hold things together. When you take that kind of drive and the aggressive nature of mankind to start with, and you put it out in the galactic community, the curiosity makes mankind push buttons. Okay, as in, take a laptop, set it down in front of a human, even an aboriginal, as in somebody that is from a so-called third world. And humans will instinctively start pushing buttons, which in and of itself isn't a problem with a laptop, but on a starship that can be a disaster. So the off-worlders are looking at it going, if that kind of aggressive curiosity gets out without control, then without guidance, I think is a better way of putting it, then it really is a disaster waiting to happen, and there's a lot more complications that can come up. And I think we should deal with this one right off the bat. Moonlick in Spreaker has asked, are we monkeys to them? And the answer is no. Okay, the monkeys on Earth are monkeys. Humans are Homo sapien. Are humans ill-educated? Are they poorly controlled and poorly managed? Absolutely. But the reality of it is that monkeys aren't half as dangerous as humans are. And I do mean that with the greatest of respect, really. Mankind has done some phenomenal things. But when we take a look, for instance, at the most commonly understood or commonly seen alien, we look at the Greys. Okay, those are the scientists. Those are the ones that are really into understanding what makes humans tick on the global level. They're the ones that have built the hybridization program to make communication even functionally possible between the various races. It just so happens that mankind is the most adaptable and therefore the most useful where it comes to that program. But the off-worlders look at a couple of other things. One is that they don't know which humans to approach. They've tried the various different governments and met with staggering levels of, shall we say, disorganization, and certainly they haven't come across a single government, if you will, that is at this point in time focusing on global unity. Global conquest? Yes, but not unity. And there isn't an interstellar race out there that, at least not that I'm aware of, that has managed to get there without actually having a global government. And this is one of the big reasons why the off-worlders don't just come out and show themselves, because even in, I don't know about in your area there, Dave, but, I'm pretty certain it's the same all the way around, where you take a block of people and you're going to get some that are very open to the idea of meeting new races. There are ones that are aggressive, and of course there's a bunch of them that are absolutely terrified or just plain don't believe in them. There's no continuity for the off-worlders to focus on. Now faced with so many variations, from their standpoint, who do you talk to? We used to be able to go, who do you call? And you call the Ghostbusters, but he knew that was where you went. But where it comes from the off-worlder standpoint, which group of humans do you actually take a look at? Okay. Well, I like Joe's comment.
Well, and that is a big comment. Like, we had Samantha Mowat on the show last night, and you know Samantha, and she is very, very experienced with what she has gone through, and this kind of goes to the attitude that a lot of people have out there. All right. And leading to Joe's question, which is, if the aliens just knocked on people's doors and asked if they would like to go for a ride, I'm sure some people would say yes. And I would have to agree with that.
Absolutely. The problem isn't would some people say yes. The problem is which ones, because the majority aren't going to handle looking at a reptilian of any height very comfortably. Granted, a Nord shows up on deck, knocks on your door and says, "Hey, would you like to go for a ride?" Most people are going to be, most people are going to be a little bit more amicable because they look human. And mankind is still very caught up in appearances. Okay. And this is an interesting sidetrack from Susan Mack in Spreaker, where she's asking if I see a buildup of separate national military forces in the short term, as in the next few years. And the dangerous part is yes. The question is where they're going to focus.
Well, I think they're going to continue to focus on the Middle East because, that's pretty much like no man's land out there.
Right about now, it really is. And there's a lot of reasons for it. And you can bet your bottom dollar with that much activity going on, never mind whether it actually blows into a war, it's going to draw a lot of off-world attention. Okay, because again, this is that societal turning point where mankind is going through this stage where it's either going to pull itself apart or it's going to figure out how to communicate. Only it's kind of a flip of the coin which one. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why the off-worlders look at it going, should we step in? Should we put our ship on the ground? And the unfortunate part is this has been tried many, many, many times in the past. It was tried, if we go back to Atlantis, they literally put a ship on the ground. Okay. And, when that happened, the people at that time, even though they were extremely outclassed in the military standpoint, they still tried forcibly taking the technology that the Atlanteans had. That resulted in a disaster and a half and a whole pile of dead people. Okay. Sure.
Follow-up question from Susan Mack. She is asking, are there off-world forces in Syria? I don't think it's Syria, and I could be wrong on that, but I know from listening to other researchers, whether we believe it or not, we go peek woo here for a second, that there are people who believe that there is some sort of dogman-like creature that stands about 7-8 feet tall that is out there with some sort of ancient sword chopping up infidels.
Well, I won't argue the point of the dogman being out there. Okay. And the 7 feet, that's a big one. If you're dealing with a 7-foot dogman, you're dealing with an awfully tall one. They normally are sitting around the issue of, your 6-foot mark. Mind you, if they stand up, if you can get them to stand up to their full height, I can see them breaking the 7. But the problem with them is it's not just the infidels. You see, the dogman, also known as Lycan, by the way, is quite literally they're hunters. And they're not really that fussy as to political alignment of the individual they go after. They simply go after the most challenging yet functional target. Okay. I mean, will they use swords? Absolutely. Swords, claws, they don't tend to turn to advanced weaponry. but they're not fussy about who they take out. Okay. And are they up in that area? Yeah. But,
And the reason why I bring that up is Jody Cook, who is a dogman researcher out of Ohio. He has actually had, as he is ex-military, he has actually had a number of reports from soldiers reaching out to them who have seen these over the past number of years over in Afghanistan.
right. Which makes sense. I mean, let's face it. If you're a hunter, going into a place where people are killing each other, it's so much easier to find a target and remove it without anybody looking for, in this case, a dogman. You know, so to speak, hide in plain sight. Everybody's hiding and looking for cover. But the one thing I would like to clear up is the dogman is not working for any particular military. Okay, it's not like they're being employed here. Which is in my eyes, that's the logical question as to where it goes from there.
What about these giants, these Nephilim-type creatures that are apparently being found over there by special forces? Have you heard anything about that, Keith?
Well, they've been around for quite some time. Now, for the most part, they've stayed. The reason I can say they stay out of sight is because, well, let's face it, they don't walk around in downtown. But they're still in existence. It's not like they went extinct. Much like the dinosaurs, at that point, the giants that you're referring to, because of the atmosphere, because of the oxygen that was available in the atmosphere at the time, they were able to get a lot taller, a lot bigger overall. And there are still some, but they're not on the surface. You won't find them walking freely around the area for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is standard weaponry will kill them. Okay, you put enough bullets in one, and it will do them in. But are they a real entity? Yes. But for the most part, they're underground. And let's be a little more clear on that. They're in the inner earth side of things.
So are you then saying that, for as far as you know, that Hollow Earth is a real thing?
Yes.
And how do you back that up?
Well, sad to say, in about 30 years, which is usually the way things work out. I found out a number of years ago, and anybody, quite frankly, anybody that knows how to astral travel, I shouldn't say anybody, but many people that know how to astral travel can get into it. Okay, there are some dangers with going there, mind you. The other issue is take a look at just a standard satellite of the North and South Pole, and you don't see a whole lot. But there are imagery technology. There is imagery technology that actually shows a hole in the Earth, that in the top end, that you can actually get through. At the ends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from my standpoint, I learned a long time ago, the inner Earth, or the hollow Earth, if you will. I like Joe's question, how can the Earth be hollow if it's flat? Flat things can be hollow. But no, I found out there's an entire set of continents underneath. Okay, as for lighting, that's done in a number of ways, not the least of which is bioluminescence. Okay, plus, of course, and I'm pretty certain you're aware of this, that you're aware of this, Dave, the fact that many crystals actually glow in the dark.
Yes, that I did know.
Okay. Now, of course, when you get into that kind of thing, and of course, the thermal venting and what have you is where the heat comes from. So this is how they can manage to pull that out.
Okay, so what kind of creatures, under your estimation, or what you've been able to figure out through astral travel or your own psychic kinetic ability, what's down there?
Well, quite frankly, a lot of what people call, or of what I call, the ancient races, have actually moved into the underground. The things that most people chalk up to mythological creatures are still down there. Okay, and when I mean mythological, you take a look at some of the smaller dragons, you take a look at your elves and dwarves, you look at most of the earthbound spirits, things that are known as your woodland spirits. The so-called mythological sprites and fairies and what have you are much more at home. Okay, and yes, in answer to that question, gnomes do actually stay there. The thing with gnomes and with dwarves is they're very close to the surface, and you will find them periodically on the surface.
You just had to bring up gnomes.
I did not. Gnome did.
He always does. He always does.
Well, yes. Hence why the name, I suspect. I think that's a precursor to what he's going to do.
True that. True that.
Yeah.
True that. So, okay, so you have all of these celestial type creatures that are down in the hollow earth, which is something that we've never really talked about on this show. So,
that's true.
Keith, there's a lot of people out there who will say, this sounds like a bunch of malarkey.
Yep. And, I mean, I can take that, and first of all, I will absolutely agree that most people will. But I look at it this way. Back in the 70s, I was telling the doctors, and understand I was only 12 at the time, but I was telling the doctors they would never understand human healing until they took a look at the triple helix, to which I was told I was completely nuts. Except for the fact that in late 98, early 99, they finally discovered the thing.
Right.
Okay. The same thing happened when I was talking to people about in the late 70s, very early 80s, about how the Canadian government could tell how much money you had in your pocket and what denomination if you walked into a government building. And then on 60 Minutes or W5 or one of those programs, in the early 2000s, they came out and did a documentary explaining how it happened.
Right.
So when we look at the Hollow Earth and those races, I just look at it as, yes, people will argue. They'll say it doesn't exist. Right. And in about 30 years, when the government finally gets around to revealing the information, that's when we take a look at it and decide whether or not the information was there. Prior to that, I have no idea how to back it up.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Now, when we talk about, USOs, so underwater craft,
yes,
and species, are there literally, is it like the movie The Abyss where there are communities of spaceships living in the deeper parts of the ocean?
Essentially, yes, although not exactly spaceships. The sea elves, quite frankly, live in the deeper parts. Okay, yes, they have a complete community, and intriguingly enough, well, I shouldn't call it a community, it's a complete civilization down there. Intriguingly enough, since you brought up the Abyss, it comes in convenient. The material that they explain in the Abyss to be able to enable the human to breathe underwater was literally developed by them. Okay, because when they first started drawing humans down, they wanted to get to know them, but they couldn't. The sea elves could not. The sea fairies could not breathe above water. So they'd come up and they'd grab the occasional person that they found and take them down. Well, of course, as you can well imagine, you grab a human and pull him underwater, he's going to drown before you get him anywhere. Okay, in time, they figured out that they had to supply some form of oxygen, some form of breathability for them. And they ended up basically taking the idea of what the deep sea bell works like, trap the oxygen and get the people inside it so that they can breathe to go underwater further, which worked great to start with until they got down to the actual depths where, well, quite frankly, the people didn't survive because they ended up being crushed. Net result was they developed that fluid, if you will, and some of your listeners may well have experienced this, but they developed that fluid that they're talking about, that they talk about in the abyss, to add enough solidity to the human body so it wouldn't crush under the weight, under the pressure. But when people are taken by them and returned to the surface, many times what happens is whoever the individual is, they will end up coughing up a staggering amount of this, if you will, bluish, kind of a grayish blue mucus, and all it is they've filled the lungs with it so that the body can live. And when they get them back up, the human just automatically expels it.
Right. Dale has an interesting question in the SOR chat room. He is asking, why then don't oil rigs drill into these hollows? Because they're going pretty darn deep.
Yes, they are, but not deep enough. On the flip side of that, they also know, when you're looking at drilling in, the oil rigs, the oil moguls, are looking for oil. They're looking for something to pull up. They're not looking for an access point. Okay, if you're looking for oil, you look for that black spot, and that's what you're targeting. You're not targeting a missing hole. Because, I mean, realistically, from the oil people's standpoint, why punch a hole where there isn't anything to make money off of? The other issue, of course, is that right now, and I don't know how deep the oil rigs go myself, but shall we say, the closest to the surface are around the 300-mile mark underground. Okay, meaning you're not, as far as I know, there isn't an oil rig on the planet that'll dig that deep.
Well, they are experimenting with going to the Earth's crust.
Yes, they are. And that should prove to be, shall we say, entertaining when they get there. Because what they'll find might really throw a loop. And of course, like they've done with so many industries in the past and so many discoveries in the past, what will likely happen the first number of times it happens is that the government of whichever area will hush it up right away and move them out of it for whatever reason.
All right, this leads to Jace's question, who is asking, how do all these beings in Hollow Earth keep the peace?
Well, where it comes to the Dwarven Society, it's actually quite simple. Because of the devastation they went through centuries back, and the fact they still run on a very solid, what the heck is it called now, monarchy, their focus is simply on survival. They do enjoy the digging, that side of it, absolutely. But because they pay solid adherence to the monarchy, it eliminates the fight. Okay, they don't have the issue of conflict as far as trying to take over new territory. Okay, when you look at the majority of the fairy folk, they are so connected to the natural world that starting a fight is just something that you just don't do. It isn't one of these things that they think about. Okay, at least not amongst themselves. That said, pushed into a corner, you really don't want to deal with them. Because being that connected to the earth, well, let's put it this way. They have, you know of sinkholes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sinkholes can be deliberately triggered if you know how. And that's done from underground, where these guys operate quite readily. Now, if you think about that, if, they don't have a reason to attack each other, primarily because of the fact that they don't have, contrary to popular belief, the same greed, the same malcontent with where their life is. Most of them are very content sitting in the location they're in. Yes, there is some expansion, but not at even a fraction. I'm talking population expansion. Not even a fraction of the speed that humans reproduce.
Mm-hmm. So how do these creatures, if they live in Hollow Earth, how do they get through the heat?
Well, that's the nice part about it. Because of the way that the tunnels are built, you can actually build a tunnel that works as both a heater and, well, basically it's a built-in air conditioner, because the air still has to move. And when you're dealing with underground lakes and underground rivers, plus you're dealing with setting the tunnels up properly, you actually get pretty decent wind. Okay, net result, if you can when you get the crosswind, it literally will cool it down. And of course, you have the other little thing that you got to remember. They're used to it. People like you and I, Dave, we're not going to handle 130 degrees outside very well, at least not that I'm aware of.
No, I'll be sweating. I'm not going to lie.
Like I was down in Oliver a few years ago, and we hit 47. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, 47 is, at roughly speaking, about 120. Okay, and that made a mess of me, and I can handle the 40.
Yeah.
But the people down in Oliver, they were fine because they're used to it. It's like up where you are, the winters are annoyingly cold. Okay. I'm not overly impressed with the cold, and I doubt very much I'd be that happy up there.
Right. Couple questions coming in from the Revolution Radio chat room. This one comes from Dr. Rowe. Actually, both of them are from Dr. Rowe. He says, as far as you know, are Russia's big lakes the home of colossal underwater humanoids?
The biggest ones, the best way I can put it is, access point, yes, but are they themselves the whole, or are they living right at the bottom of the lake? I don't know for certain they've got any. Well, I can pretty much guarantee they don't have a city that is visible, even on an ultrasound standpoint. But is there access point down there? The answer is yes. Bear in mind, if you know how to deal with it, you can actually build access doors with the right superstructure to make certain that you can get in and out of the lake without actually living in the water.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Could this subspecies of alien, could they live underground? Could they handle the heat if they could handle the pressure of deep water?
Some of them, yes. Now, if you're referring to the specific giant ones, not to the depth that we've been referring, but 1,000 feet underwater wouldn't be that hard. And you also got to remember that the other thing about many of the lakes, and of course I am not by any functional stretch a geologist, but many lakes have shelving that you can't see past, that an ultrasound that the sonic that the sonar bounces off, so you don't see what's below it.
Right. Okay. So sticking with this, got a question here. Adam is asking then, so is Hollow Earth with the caverns, or is it completely hollow and no structure?
Oh, it's certainly not completely hollow. There is a core. Okay. And what the scientists, the thing that human scientists found out years ago, it does have a solid core. That is part of what keeps the planet balanced. But it's a combination of the two. There are very large caverns that, literally go on for miles, but they are linked by a catacomb system. Think of it like like an oversized anthill is the best way, I think, to look at
it. Okay. Jade is asking, what are the reasons for all of these sinkholes that appear around the Earth right now? There seems to be a plethora of them.
Yep. And that is literally because of the negativity that it's a combination. Number one, it's a natural evolution. Okay, Earth, because it is constantly breathing, meaning it expands and contracts on a regular basis, it does cause its own series of sinkholes. But that is being amplified by the amount of negative energy that mankind, and in all fairness, some of the off-world races, some of the races that are on the planet, that negative energy is amplifying the fracture rate in the Earth's crust, net result causing air pockets. Mm-hmm. And of course, the second you put an air pocket under something, it gives way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Jade's follow-up question would be, would the activities going on under the Earth account for the humming noise that is heard by so many people around the world?
Yes. That is machinery that they're working with. And this is why I think you and I touched on this quite some time back. I know I was talking to somebody about it. This is one of the reasons why I mentioned that if mankind ever pushes for a war against the ancient races, as in tries to go down and evict them, you have to understand that a sinkhole could be set up quite readily to drop a city out from underneath you. Okay, and they do have the capacity to target it in such a way that, let's say you've got and I'll just use DuPont because it's a well-known name. Let's say that DuPont is housing people that have been trying to work with the ancient races. They've been trying to be decent to the Earth itself. If they decide to drop a sinkhole around it, they've got the capacity to leave that one building standing without while dropping the rest of the city out from under them. Which, by the way, is still going to make it hard to get to the warehouse.
So these sinkholes that are happening, we see them where they're turning into mud or they're just turning into giant deep holes. Some of them have almost like rapid currents running through them with underground rivers and streams.
Yes.
Is this happening that underneath the planet or underneath the ground, pardon me, that there is some sort of pressure that is building, that is, pulling away so it can combust, much like a volcano, where sometimes a volcano needs to breathe and exhale itself, and that's where we see a lot of volcanic ash and smoke coming from volcanoes, even though they're not going to erupt?
That's where a lot of it comes from. Not all of it, but the greater majority. And in answer to that, yes, the issue around Yellowstone, I think it is a viable problem. But with a little bit of luck, Mount Kilimanjaro will go first and release the pressure, stopping the other one from going off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but yeah, it's very much a case of just like anything breathing, it expands and contracts, and this is why you end up with the sinkholes at some pretty, shall we say, random locations.
Mm-hmm. Because it just seems like recently, as in the past few months here, these sinkholes just keep popping up everywhere, and I probably should talk to a geologist or something like this, but...
Well, that would, from a geological standpoint, absolutely. I'd love to say I know from a geology standpoint, but I don't. I can tell you from a physiological standpoint, because let's face it, Earth itself is an oversized plant. It breathes. It expands, it contracts, and of course, as with dry skin, as it expands and contracts, it's going to crack.
Okay. Let's get to Renee's comment here. She is saying, so the hobbits, dwarves, and gnomes, she loves using that word, gnomes, get together, and if the ETs do not behave in Hollow Earth, they take their shovels, picks, and bats to get them to behave?
Well, that'd be a cute thought, but what humans call magic, they call normal. Okay. Which means, and this is why, especially when you look at the fairy folk and the nature spirits, if you will, they have the ability where if push were to come to shove, I'd bet on the ancient races much sooner than I would on the interstellars, on the offworlders, because the offworlders rely on technology that fits essentially the same ideas or the same principles that humans use. Granted, a lot more refined. When you start looking at the fairy folk and the dwarves, you're talking about people that know how to manipulate energy and how to work with the earth energy in a way that defies modern science. It does have logic to it, and it can be explained, but humans aren't. There's a few humans that can pull it off to a degree. Okay, but what most people call true magic, the ancient races, and especially the fairy folk, know exactly how to manipulate. An obvious example as well is when we start looking at the little people of Ireland, the leprechauns. Really nasty little individuals if they have to be. But on the whole, they're not looking for a fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess that makes sense. Let's go over to Danny's question. And Danny, from your area, Kelowna, is asking, Keith, are the trolls in Norway real, and how big can they get?
Well, the answer is yes. And how big they can get, on average, they don't get much over the 9-foot mark. Okay, most of them are down closer to the 8. But the thing with them is that they're, how do I put this? They're omnivorous, first of all, meaning they'll eat pretty much whatever's available. But they are also, they are almost aggressive in the extreme, but they're not willing to come out, or maybe I should put it, they're not stupid enough to come out in general public, because with them being aggressive, mankind would certainly hunt them down. It'd be like a crazy grizzly bear coming into the outskirts of a northern town. The locals are not going to wait for it to do a problem, to create a problem.
Okay. All right. Let's get to another question from Adnome, who is asking, why can't inner Earth creatures then live among us?
Some do. When you don't get me wrong, everyone of them certainly doesn't. There are some people, like you, obviously you've seen what we call dwarves. Okay, what humans call dwarves. Short people, little, they fall under a certain height. Okay, there's a couple of other qualifiers to them. But some of those, not very many, will venture into the upper world, into the surface world, to see what's going on, and some of them do literally live up here. Okay, they're not common because, frankly, where we talk about the dwarves, they prefer the ground. They prefer in the, under the earth. When we start looking at the elves, and there's a lot, and like I've seen a pretty high number of your half elves. In other words, humans that connected with a fairy, and the offspring is what you're now dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they blend right in. Okay, it's kind of like periodically you'll see a Nord or you'll see a Mobian, and they just look like a normal human, right? A half elf, it's very, you gotta watch for not only the configuration but also the attitude. And something to keep in mind is just because somebody looks a little different doesn't mean they're a half breed. There are humans, purebred humans, that have very fine features. Okay, so just because somebody looks a little bit finer or may seem a little stronger than what they look doesn't mean they're not human. This is one of the reasons why some of them can fit in.
Okay. All right. Another question from Danny. Have you heard of Zora from Hollow Earth? And can you verify the claims?
Well, in a nutshell, no. And bearing in mind that I haven't heard of her, but then there's a lot of humans I haven't heard of. So, bearing in mind I don't know who she is, verifying or denying her claims would be pretty much impossible.
All right. Let's move on here. Another question from Danny. Can you tell us more about the planet that is allegedly on the same orbit as ours, but on the other side of the sun? Do they know about this? Is it there? Could we live there too?
The answer to most of that is yes. NASA knows about it. Okay. It's essentially, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's essentially identical to Earth, and I don't mean that the continents sit in the same place. But when we're talking about atmospheric configuration, it is the same. It's close enough to the same that it's easy enough to work with. Okay, I'm pretty certain that the exact configuration is a little off, but bearing in mind where it's sitting and the fact that humans have already ended up there and are living there already, the answer is yes, it's very livable by humans. NASA knows about it, they just don't tell anybody about it. Can't imagine that, eh? Okay, well, in a nutshell, the moment that they admit that it's there, it's another habitable planet, Now they've got everybody wanting to get there. Okay. Second of all, we are talking a governmental issue, a governmental group, if you will, that knows about a lot of things they don't tell you. This is just one more. You think about it. The government has an engine for a vehicle that just plain does not wear out. It's a ceramic engine.
Right.
But they won't release it to the general public. Okay. So, the list of things that that the governments of the world have not released are mind-boggling. Like, for instance, the technology out of ancient Egypt that enabled the ancient Egyptians to operate inside the body without breaking the skin.
Okay. We got a bunch of more questions coming up here, Keith. It is packed right now. We got questions from Uncle Dale. We got questions from Jade. And many, many more.
This is one of the things I love about this one.
I know.
About this show. It just doesn't stop.
I know. It just keeps going. The audience loves you. They love having the questions answered. And so this is usually the way we do this with our Keith Andrews, who is here the first Friday of every month, talking everything extraterrestrial, taking your questions. So if you want to jump in, go on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio or ask a question via Facebook in the SOR Space Travelers Club on Revolution.radio in the chat room there or on Spreaker. We'd love to get your questions in. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's the encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there. This is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you for being with us. This weekend, we have Tessa Nicole Thomas coming in for the Spaced Out Weekend show. It'll be entertaining. Everything gets going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget you can check out our archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Now, Bill Cardwell, I think he is taking a night off again tonight. So we got Michael McNeil filling in for Cardwell on the password. Honorific abilitudin inatiabus. What the hell is that? Honorific abilitudin tatibus? Michael. Oh, Keith, this is just terrible. This is just terrible.
I'm still trying to figure out how they come up with these.
Oh, what they do is they take a bunch of letters from Scrabble, and whatever falls in front of them, that's what they make. But anyways, the password is set each and every night right here on the Mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, tickets are on sale at questers.ca. That's questers.ca for our first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers, September 28th through 30th, right here, where I live, at 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. I highly suggest you should come on up for a great weekend. Click on questers.ca, scroll down to the fall conference, and you're right there. Get your tickets tonight. Our Keith Andrews is here because it's the first Friday of the month, so we have the ET connection going on, which means we're taking your questions tonight. Here's one from Oscar right off the bat on Twitter, and he is asking, are some of these earthquakes, these massive quakes, being caused by hollow earth activity?
The massive ones, no, but the minor tremors are. At least to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no. Earth itself it's got natural processes that take place, and there are a couple of quakes that are coming that are not being... See, the people in Hollow Earth don't like earthquakes, per se. They don't like the big ones. Because if you think it causes a mess up here, you should try what it causes there. You know, up here, we have a storm. So you end up with a hailstorm. Okay, just because of atmospheric clashing. Can you picture what happens if you trigger a heavy earthquake underground and you're living there? Picture what is going to fall on your head. It isn't going to be small little hailstones. You're going to be dropping stalactites the size of a bus, and those are the small ones. So, no, they do trigger in their areas. They do trigger minor earthquakes to relieve the pressure so they don't deal with the big ones.
Coming from Twitter, Goddess Michelle is asking, do you know anything about stump people? What the hell, Michelle? Seriously, does this have to do anything with Team Stump? Keith,
well,
are there stump people?
Well, there are stumpy people, if that helps. Are there tree people, as in what the Lord of the Rings call, you know, what Tolkien coined the term Ents? The answer is yes. But I'm not entirely certain who came up with the idea of stump people, depending on what, unless they're talking about trees. But, you know, I'd be looking at whatever mushrooms people are playing with.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
so are you saying you're not on Team Stump? Is that what you're saying right now?
yeah, pretty much.
You're killing me.
I know.
Killing me. Come on.
Well, think of it this way. How do I put this? I play all sides of the table at the same time because, well, the fact of the matter is, from what little I've heard of Team Stump, they work well together. They play well with others. It's me that doesn't play well with others. You know?
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that, Goddess, on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Dale is asking, did the underground races start living underground in response to the Younger Dryas event that killed the North American megafauna and the Clovis people?
Wait a minute. You want to run that by me just one more time?
All right. As we're talking about Hollow Earth.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Did the underground races start living underground in response to the Younger Dryas events that killed the North American megafauna and the Clovis people?
That was part of it. Okay, that kind of, if you will, finished the migration. But the reason they went underground to start with was because of the speed and the aggression of humans as humans surfaced. They literally went underground as a way of survival. But when the major fauna started to fade, that became the atmosphere upstairs became a whole lot more complicated. Because let's not forget, on top of the fauna dying and therefore the level of oxygen collapsing, you also have a staggering amount of toxicity being tossed into the air as all of the dying plants decayed. Okay. So you move down into where there's underground, the underground mosses, the underground mushrooms that in confined areas can clear the air a lot quicker, making it possible to save, possible to breathe.
Okay. I'd never heard about that, but that's okay. That is quite okay. Let's get to Jade's question. She is asking, do the humans on this other inhabitable planet come here?
The answer would be yes. By the way, I'll come back to that one in just 10 seconds. B has stated in here, Keith dismisses as an insane theory. No. The issue with that is, do I know anything about the stump people? As I said, the only ones I know of are the shorter, if you will, what Tolkien identified as Ents. That's not what they're called, but it's not a question of it's not possible. It's a question of I was asked whether or not they exist and whether or not I was a member of said team.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, the people that other planet, by the way, the one that's on the opposite side of the sun, that's called Mobius. Okay, and Lord now knows how, of all people, I managed to find it. As far as because I found it through a link years ago. I found NASA's reference to it through a link years ago on their site, and it's sitting right directly on the other side of the sun, which is why you'll never see it from here.
Okay. Well, let's move on here. Mike is asking, Keith, do you believe the story of Phil Schneider, a United States engineer working at Dulce military base in New Mexico, who was one of the only survivors of an aliens U.S. military battle in the tunnels underground that base?
Well, I've got no reason to disbelieve him. Do I know that there have been conflicts under that base? The answer is yes, between humans and off-worlders. Okay. But do I have any reason to believe that he wasn't the only survivor of a given battle? No, not at all. I got nothing to work with as far as that goes. So, I'm quite willing to work with the possibility that he is the only one of the few survivors.
Okay. I think his story is totally correct. I just have a feeling he was right.
And it does fit. Like I said, I know there have been underground battles. Right. And I know that there are conflicts between the races and between humans under that area. So it stands to reason humans aren't categorically going to get wiped out every time they come across an alien. Some of them will survive.
I get that, but I mean, the fact that, Phil Schneider died under mysterious circumstances at a very young age, does it make you think that maybe he was taken out and for the reasoning that he had gone public with his statements and people were starting to believe him?
And quite frankly, from my standpoint, that fits the bill. Does it seem accurate from my standpoint? Does it feel correct? The answer is yes. Okay. When we start talking about, instinctively, from my standpoint, it's pretty black and white. Was he there? Was he in a fight that he was one of the few survivors of? That feels accurate. I have nothing solid to refute the matter with. And since I know that there's been battles down there for generations between various races, human and other, it stands to reason. And we know that the human governments, and quite frankly, some of the off-world and ancient race governments as well, do have a tendency of shutting a problem down by terminating the source.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you start looking at people dying under mysterious circumstances, you do have to wonder, or at least you're encouraged to.
Hey, did you ever hear the sounds of hell?
Yeah.
From Russia?
Oh, I haven't heard that. I thought you were referring to the literal ones.
No, there was apparently a number of years ago, Art Bell played it on Coast to Coast, which were believed to be, or allegedly to be, when the Russian team drilled down, I don't even remember how far they drilled down, but that they heard people screaming, and it's called the sounds of hell.
Well, I can tell you this. If they tapped into that, probably wasn't hell. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not debating whether hell exists. That's a long story. But what they undoubtedly tapped into was a community, into the edge of a community that is anything but pleasant. And therefore, hearing people screaming, hearing the sounds of torture, the sounds of, what would amount to blast furnaces beyond it, that would make absolutely total sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Let's get to Up's question on Revolution Radio. What do you know about what's being hidden in Antarctica and Greenland?
Well, in Greenland, actually in both Greenland and in Antarctica, there are a couple of downed ships. Antarctica also holds an access point to the Hollow Earth. Greenland holds a whole pile of information buried underneath the surface, because it's actually the northern edge of Greenland. There's an underwater access point into an entire base under Greenland. And I'll use the term base a little loosely. It's dang near the size of a city. Well, small city. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of people here.
Okay. Let's get to another question here. Joe is asking, is gravity different in Hollow Earth?
Not much. You're still dealing with, it's the pressure, the air pressure is a little higher. But the gravity itself it's kind of funny. It's still pretty much the same way. It's just, it's got a couple of extra buffers in it. Okay. Primarily because of the way that it's built, but essentially it's the same gravity that we've got here, but the air is certainly thicker, as it were.
How do you mean thicker?
Have you ever, when you walk into a sauna and it's just a heavier or more, it's not always a humid air, but the air seems to be harder to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the pressure down there that the air gets a little more dense, if you will. But for the people that live down there, it doesn't matter. And it's not so dense that it would be akin to the flip side, go up to a high mountain where the air is really thin, it's hard to breathe. Same idea, just from the other end of the scale.
Okay. Doesn't really make sense to me, but if it does to you, I guess that works.
Well, the way I look at it is this. Because you're in closer quarters inside a cavern system, okay, whereas you've got a lot more room for air to move, the air isn't quite as mobile. So it's a little bit more, if you will, stagnant. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it make sense. It's kind of like the dry heat in the middle of a desert.
Okay.
Okay. Don't know if that makes sense, but then in all fairness, I'm not a meteorologist or an atmospheric scientist.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Ad Gnome is asking, what do gnomes eat underground?
Well, aside from mushrooms, lichen, tubers, roots, the smaller of the rodents, they certainly don't go after the big ones. Something to do with size, But I mean, they're an omnivorous. They're an omnivorous race. They eat worms. They eat bugs. Pretty much the same thing that people can eat. They just eat smaller portions.
Right. Danny is asking, Keith, constellations in our sky are made up of stars. Is our sun part of a constellation seen from other planets? Also, what's our sun and our moon's name? I'm thinking it's Phil and Gordon.
Well, I'm not, in all fairness, entirely certain of the moon's name, and no, it is not green cheese. But I do know that the Earth itself calls itself Itzau. Okay, most people call it Earth. Many people refer to it as Gaia, and she doesn't mind the name, because from her standpoint, who cares what you call her? Treat her properly. But her actual name is Itzau.
Itzau. That's the planet's name. Like pizza? Are you saying pizza?
No, Itzau.
Pizza.
Y-T-Y-T-S-O-W. Itzau.
Itzau. Sorry, I thought you said pizza there for a while.
Well, I was thinking pizza, but no. That was yesterday's dinner.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem. Let us move on here to the Revolution Radio chat room. Stardust Man is asking, Keith, do other countries besides Iceland detour roads to avoid elves and such?
It wouldn't surprise me. Now, I haven't personally heard of it, but it certainly makes sense, considering in France they have laws for, alien landings, and, it does stand to reason, especially, if you go into Ireland, that would not be a shock to find that they also likely look at granting permits for where the little people are. Granting permits when you go to put a new building in, you go to do, forest harvesting. I could see quite readily the people in Ireland doing it. Looking at what they're willing to touch, and it is undoubtedly part of the reason why certain governments pick specific parts of the wildlands and say you can't touch that. That's now a national reserve.
Okay. Well, let's see here. Let's scroll up on the questions here. Danny is asking, some people think mushrooms are not from this planet. Can you verify? And is there any other flora or fauna that people would be surprised to find out are not from Earth?
Well, first of all, can I verify? Not being a botanist, that's going to be a little tricky. However, given the evolution of fauna of the flora and fauna that I've watched, mushrooms evolved here. Okay, they were they are a early plant prepping the ground for the bigger plants. So, that being said, are there mushrooms, or more to the point, mushroom-looking people that are not from here? The answer is definitively yes. Okay, but mushrooms themselves are a natural evolutionary process for the most part. Okay. Would not surprise me, that said, to find out that some spores ended up coming because of off-worlders, but I don't have anything concrete to, if you will, prove that side of it.
All right. Renee is asking, so how could wood elves be hiding in hollow earth when they need to be around forests to meld into?
Because tree roots go down. How is that for subtle? You still have trees and bushes and what have you underground. The funny part about it is the elves don't have to meld into the trees. They just simply have the ability to do so. Dryads, on the other hand, are another issue altogether. And they do require full-size trees because that's literally what they live in.
Bazooka Joe is asking, do Middle-earth people disguise themselves as creatures like gophers or marmots so they can pop up and see what we are doing without us knowing?
Sometimes, yes. Brownies are notorious for that. Now, brownies aren't exactly Middle-earth people, but they are wood spirits. And they quite readily will disguise themselves in that fashion, or more to the point, make you think they disguise themselves in that position, in that kind of an outfit. But they absolutely spy on what humans are doing. That's how they know whether or not to move out of the area. Because when humans start digging a mine, unlike dwarves, humans, when they mine, have a very, shall we say, coarse way of doing it, and in most of the Hollow Earth people's outlook, absolutely no patience and less finesse.
All right. Let's move on here. I'm just checking a few of the chat rooms here to see if I'm missing any questions, Keith, because we always like to get the questions out of the way from our audience. That is the most important. Danny has a couple of questions here. He is asking, is there such thing that you know of as a bottomless pit?
Well, technically the answer would be yes, the one that runs from the North Pole to the South Pole. But, let's face it, when you take a bottomless pit, it's actually called a tunnel. So yeah, there's a fair chunk of bottomless pits. But what he's referring to, there are pits that they cannot find the bottom to. Okay, never mind those ones. But when you're talking about a bottomless pit, you're talking about a pit that when you drop something into it, you never hear the body, you never hear it hit. And there are pits that are, quite frankly, deep enough you'd never hear it connect. Especially when you think about the ones that open into a cavern. You'll never hear the noise come back up.
Right. How can a tunnel be a bottomless pit?
Well, think about it.
If I'm driving through the Fraser Canyon, I got 7 tunnels that I have to go through to get to Vancouver.
Right. And think of it this way, okay? If you take a pit, all a pit is, in essence, is you've got a hole at one point, and the bottom end of that hole is at a lower point, not necessarily directly under it, but at a lower point. So any one of those tunnels, okay, that are up in the Rockies there, any one of them, if the one end is higher than the other, okay, if you plug it off, it's called a pit. The second you knock the bottom out of it, and you can enter from both the bottom and the top, you now have a tunnel.
Okay.
Make sense?
Not really, because you're driving through. You're not falling through.
Well, this is why I say it. A pit, when you look at the actual definition, simply means the top like the one end is higher than the bottom. It doesn't say, like, I've never seen a definition of a pit that says it can't be at an angle. Okay. But I do know of a couple where there's a hole, like, for instance, with an overhang, like an overhang in the mountains, where you'll have a hole at the top of the overhang that punches clear through the bottom of that overhang. Okay. And so do they exist? The answer is yes. By the way, those are also known as chimneys.
Okay, that makes more sense. All right. Let's move on here to another Danny question. He is asking, Keith, do you believe Hollow Earth will ever be disclosed to the general public? Why or why not?
Well, the answer is yes, because eventually mankind will figure out how to actually get along with itself, at which point the ancient races will be safe to come to the surface, and you can actually have interaction between the two levels. Now, fortunately, he did say, will it ever happen? Not will it happen within your lifetime.
When do you see it happen?
In all fairness, you're probably looking at about another 500 years. Well, I have a tendency of looking at the longest it's likely to take. I just can't see mankind in the next 10 years all of a sudden going, let's not shoot each other because we're a different color and don't believe in quite the exact same thing. It's a matter of logistics from my standpoint.
Yeah, I understand where you're going with that. But, I mean, we're talking, if we want to talk disclosure, which was supposed to be our topic tonight, but we've been kind of hijacked by the questions.
Yeah,
and I'm very much okay with that. That's just the way it goes a lot of times. So, I mean, when I'm kind of looking at it, I'm looking at it like, okay, so we're going to get aliens in probably the next 20 to 30 years. Maybe 50. Okay. Why would it take another 5 years to prove a hollow Earth?
Oh, it's not going to take that long. My understanding of your question was where mankind would have access to it. Okay. It being revealed likely inside the next, probably going to be about, in all fairness, probably about the next 30 years that they finally go, yeah, it really exists. The extent of it is probably going to be closer to the 50-year mark. But that's a question of getting the technology in there to be able to explore as deep as they need to without running into complications with foreign nationals, for lack of a better way of putting it. The foreign nationals being the people that live down there.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to another question. This one from Renee. A few moments ago, you mentioned about brownies, these creatures, brownies.
Yes.
Are they vicious, and what do they look like?
Not in the slightest. They can be if you corner them, but inherently, no. They're actually quite a peaceful little group. Basically, you're looking at people that are about a foot tall, rather on the stocky side. They favor the browns and green clothing, or more often than not, closer to your darker, your dark browns and blacks, because it blends more readily into the underbrush. Okay, very often they are they're literally a little on the portly side, but that's because they don't exactly run very far. They rely on concealment. Okay, and they absolutely have the capacity to work with the animals for distraction or safety, depending on the situation.
Okay. Let's move on. Danny is asking, is there an important person in history that you know of that you believe not to be from Earth?
Well, in all fairness, Merlin I do question not so much with whether he was from Earth, so much as whether he got to that level of understanding on his own. Okay, most of the people, I don't know of any in history that were specifically not exactly from here. Even when you take a look at the Pharaohs were absolutely in contact with the off-worlders. But were the Pharaohs themselves off-worlders? Not as far as I'm aware. Okay, now that being said, many of their advisors were. And one theory that I came across, which actually holds a fair amount of, shall we say, substantial backing, is the issue of the headpieces that they wore were in recognition of the people that were guiding them.
Let's get over to Joe's question here. I accidentally skipped over this one from earlier, and we don't want Joe's hair to get all ruffled and curly. He asked a question earlier about gravity in Hollow Earth. Do you believe, or what is the gravity like at Hollow Earth?
Essentially, it's the same. Essentially, it's the same as it is up here. We're still dealing with the same planet. The only difference isn't so much in the gravity, because of the way that the system is set up. It's more in the way the atmosphere feels. So it can feel a little heavier simply because it's harder to breathe for people that aren't from there. But for the people that live there, you're still looking at the same gravity. Because you're still dealing with the same mass.
Okay. Let's move on. Mike is asking in the SOR Space Travelers, what kind of propulsion systems do most alien craft use?
The good ones use the oscillatory densification of the tritransspatial equipolarity, aka the OTE drive. Basically, and we'll try and keep it as English as we can get it, because basically it is powered by the shockwave created by escaping electrons, and they simply redirect that kinetic energy to run the engine. I think that's about it. That's the short answer for it.
Okay, I'm going to add to that a little bit here, because I think it's an important question. When we as mankind are said to be having scientists try and go back and take some of these craft that have crashed here and figure out their propulsion systems, do we have the technology or the know-how to even figure it out?
Well, the good news or bad, I'm not sure which. Do they have the technology at this moment? No. Are they on the track or on the right track to doing it? The answer is yes, but it's going to be a bit before they figure it out. Part of the problem they're running into, for instance, with the gravity drives, they're looking at gravity backwards. And until they get that aspect turned around, they're going to have trouble replicating. When you're looking at the OTE drive, the technology hasn't, at least not to the best of my knowledge, considering we don't have starships right now, as in ships that'll travel to another planet, like another solar system. This leads me to believe that they haven't figured it out, but they don't have the technology that's sensitive enough to pick up the shockwave, although they are already looking into the quantum fields. And it's beyond, on a smaller level, than the quantum field that they've got to get to. That was why, when I first spotted the triple helix, it was their lack of technology, the limited technology they had, that stop them from seeing it at that point. And this is why I say it's a question of the technology, not their drive and not mankind's ability to analyze. It's simply the technology hasn't been developed quite far enough.
Excellent. Let's get to Jade's question. She is asking, will we ever be able to get out from the control of the globalist cabal people and systems? If so, will this be through the help of extraterrestrials? And if so, what race?
Well, if we qualify help as in guidance towards how to do it, not direct interference, the answer is yes. Ultimately, yes, they will help in that capacity, but that's an issue of helping people understand the philosophy behind it, not orchestrating an overthrow. Mankind has gotten out from underneath this kind of behavior before. So, can it be repeated? Will it be repeated? The answer is yes. Exactly how long it's going to take, that I cannot give a functional answer at this point. I just don't have one. But is it doable? The answer is yes. The problem is that, first and foremost, the first thing that has to happen is that the general public has to come to one realization. And this is going to raise all kinds of hackles, but that one realization that the general population has to come to is that the so-called cabal leaders, as it were, they are no different than the pauper living on the street. They are just people with different abilities, with different options that they've managed to capitalize on. But they are no better, no worse, no more gifted or less than JP Normal.
Right. Let's move on. Danny is asking, Keith, would disclosure create mass panic like they say, or is that just an excuse to keep the knowledge hidden?
Oh, mass disclosure. If you were to bring aliens just all of a sudden across the globe and have them show up above major cities where people just knew they were there, right? You would have panic, the likes of which you wouldn't recognize. Okay, you would take this entire world in all probability and turn it completely upside down. So, is this an advisable road? In my eyes, no. It's not a question of the government saying, oh, we're going to keep it secret because we want the special secret, although I have no doubt some of them feel that way. But the logistical disaster that would happen and the economic crash that would occur literally overnight would be almost impossible to recover from without going almost back to the Stone Age. So, is it advisable for an overall, for that kind of a disclosure? No. It's got to be done quietly, which is what's happening. And in all fairness, the governments around the world are already disclosing it by doing things like passing laws that directly refer to aliens and putting up monuments that multiple government agencies are saying, yes, they're real. And of course, the declassified information and the people coming out, this is all a way of getting it out in the open. But, I certainly wouldn't want to be in the area. And let's face it, I'm pretty open where it comes to my outlook on aliens. But I wouldn't want to be in the middle of a city that all of a sudden the aliens showed up. Not because I'd be afraid of the aliens opening fire on anything. It would be the panic and the hysteria that would likely evolve.
I'll tell you right now, I honestly believe that there is no way at possibility that disclosure is going to happen. Now, there are people, including high up, like Luis Elizondo, who say it's already happening. It's underway. The process has begun. But who is setting the process? And who has brought this out? And the reason why I say that, Keith, is because I'm a firm believer that there are a lot of UFO secrets that governments around the world, not just the U.S. government, have.
Right.
And that information
Absolutely.
keeps on slowly leaking out. It's like a dripping faucet that you just can't stop the drip. It is slowly coming out. At times, it's a slight trickle, but at most of the time, it's just a drip. And I believe point blank that if disclosure is going to happen, they being the governments of the world, have to have full control over that. Because if it came out on certain situations that they have known about this for decades, or even millennia, if you go back to the hieroglyphics of the Egyptians, where they put spaceships up and what looks to be aliens up in certain hieroglyphics, I think that we're in trouble. I really do. And I don't think that the mass part of the population would ever be able to accept the fact that there are aliens out there. Aliens have been misconstrued. Aliens have been vilified in movies and video games. And sure, a lot of people will sit there and say we're not giving humanity enough credit. But there is a lot of people on this planet who are religious one way or another, as well as people who will just be damn well scared. And I don't think that the majority of the population on this planet is ready for any type of contact.
I absolutely concur with you 100% there. You know, the sad reality of it is this, and it oddly enough, it was said by a purported alien on a movie. And Spock one day made a very simple comment on the original Star Trek. Sometimes the having is not so pleasing as the wanting. Meaning, people that want disclosure and that push for disclosure because it's a secret and we have a right to know may not be happy with what they find. You know, because, I mean, you have to remember that the moment that happens, now you've got multiple cultures that have their own way of looking at things. Okay, like you take, for instance, human military, pretty much all of the military does the same thing. If you're insubordinate, at worst, for the most part, and I'm talking just simply talking back to a superior officer, you simply get a reprimand. You may get KP duty. You might end up in the stocks, depending on the military. In Srizazian culture, in a military situation, you talk back to your superior officer, and they will kill you on the spot. There won't be any sort of trial. There won't be any sort of I've got my right to say. It doesn't exist, and they don't care whether or not you're Srizazian or whether you're human. They do it the same way. Because for them, it's simply a matter of that's the law. And I'm thinking humans will have a problem with that. And of course, I know other military, other social setups where their entire method of promotion is done, their entire society is built on promotion by attrition. In other words, if you want the job of the guy above you, kill off the guy above you. You know, humans used to do that in the idea of you keep what you kill. Right. And that was old clan thinking way back before civilization really got underway. By the way, I'm quite happy with the idea that you don't get to keep what you kill. This is not a really good, to my way of thinking, it's not a really good way of doing things.
Well, I think Mike on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio says it perfectly here. He says, people can accept that aliens exist if they are on another planet. If they are on this planet, have been for ages, have superior technology, and we don't know why, people might be a little upset.
Yeah. good, bad.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think that's the dangerous part about it. I really do.
Well, the other thing you touched on it quite nicely. If any government were to come out and say, oh, yes, aliens are here, and we've been sitting on this knowledge for the last 50 years. If you think that the trust in the government is shot right now, wait till that happens.
B in the chat room is asking, are there any alien races that have a plan to force disclosure on Earth?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. Now, I should be clear on that. The side effect, the Techlec, when they first got here, their intention was to simply strip mine the planet and take the people with it. So, yeah, I guess that would force disclosure. But that was brought to a kibosh when they ended up with a civil war. As far as I'm aware, there isn't a race that is trying to force the disclosure, primarily because 99% of the ones or more that are in this area happen to be members of the Galactic Consortium, and they've put a flat-out ban on taking the Earth out. And of course, the civilizations that have interstellar capability have already gone through what mankind is going through right now. They already know from their own histories that kind of revolution, that kind of disclosure has an extremely high probability of ending that civilization.
We only got about 5 minutes here before we have to go to break. I apologize for coughing there. I went and chopped down some wood today with Bazooka Joe. And
bet he was sore after that maneuver.
Yeah. And anyways, it's you get a little bit of dry throat after cutting down a bunch of trees. I don't know why. Maybe it's like you're breathing in like the wood chippings or whatever, like the dust from it. I don't know. But throat's a little dry, but that's okay. All right, let's move on to another question here because I do want to sneak one more in here before we go to break. And this one comes from BTO. He says, in my universal experience and perspectives, are every species living upon and within Earth actually bipedal beings scattered throughout the universe?
Negative. In all fairness, bipedal is actually a very rare configuration. First of all, they're very unbalanced. They're very unwieldy. So, you're more likely to come across your tripedal, or, in some people's cases, you get the 2 legs and a tail. But you get that balance point because bipedal figures do not have the unconscious balance on the whole of any of the other races. Okay, for instance, you take a look at the amoebics. They don't have a bipedal figure at all. It depends on the day of the week or the moment of the day as to how many limbs they've got. But bipedal is actually a very rare commodity or a very rare configuration.
I think we may have time for one more, and we'll go to Twitter for Marty, who is a retired veteran. Marty, thank you for your service, my friend. Absolutely love it that you come on in here and share your time with us. Love it when the veterans
agree with you there.
Love it when the veterans do. Love it when the veterans do. And Marty's a good one. He says, Keith, what's your take on fish people? Are there people that live in the oceans like mermaids, etc.?
Yes. And they do live, and it's not just the nice ones. You have your merfolk, which are basically a society of people that are just underwater. Okay, that's where they live, that's where they operate. You have your sea fairies, which are a whole different race and live a lot deeper. Then you have your Quatwa, which are basically they're a intelligent amphibian that evolved at the same time that, as dinosaurs were fading out, they evolved and stayed in the water. Okay, and of course, there are a number of others. I mean, there's a lot of question around how the octopus came. Okay, are there aliens that look like the octopus? Yes. The ones that live here, myself, I wouldn't bet on them being from another planet originally, but but there is a staggering number of intelligent life in the water, not the least of which is water elementals.
Where do these mermaids live? We have seen mermaids all around. I mean, you go to Vancouver, there's statues of mermaids, and in the bays, there are mermaid statues absolutely everywhere. Is this a creature in about 30 seconds or less, Keith, that is literally worldwide?
Worldwide, no, but, well, I guess technically, there are communities around the world. Okay. Most of them are in the oceans. There are a few of the bigger lakes that will have them. Okay. Like underneath the Great Lakes, for instance, in Canada here, in Canada, the U.S., there is a small pocket of them there because they go underneath the water, obviously, but they go into underneath overhangs where you can't find them.
I'm going to cut you off right there, my friend, because we do have to go to our final break of the night. Our Keith Andrews, the ET Connection, happens the first Friday of every month. Keith's next appearance on the show will be Friday, October 5th. We love it when Keith's on. Keep up the questions. We got Keith for another half hour before we bring in our news guy, Everett Thiemer, for Faux News Friday. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. This weekend, we have Tessa Nicole Thomas coming in for the weekend show. She gets going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget you can check out our archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Mike McNeil has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, honorific abilitudinitatis. I have no idea what that means. Honorific abilitudinitatis. Yeah, it's a tongue twister, but Mike or Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, tickets are on sale now for the first annual Caribou Paracon, September 28th through 30th, brought to you by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. Go to questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now. It's going to be a great weekend party, and we want you to be a part of it. For the final time tonight, we introduce our Keith Andrews. He is our resident ET expert and comes in here the first Friday of the month to talk about everything extraterrestrial with the ET connection. Keith, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. We love having you here, my friend. We got a bunch of questions still from our audience, so we're going to continue asking away, if you don't mind.
Not in the slightest. Fire away.
All right. Renee is asking, J.R. Tolkien wrote about Hollow Earth, a.k.a. Middle Earth. Did he see, in your opinion, Hollow Earth, and is that where he got his material?
Quite frankly, yeah. When there was a term that was coined in the Tolkien series of an elf friend, which he was very much one. So much of what he saw, and much of what he relayed, the imagery from it. I'm sure there was another story, another message he was putting out as well, but the imagery was remarkably close to the right mark.
That's what happens with a lot of authors, is they have this experience that is just so vivid that they need to write about it.
Well, yeah, and of course, setting it up in the science fiction, science fantasy realm makes it more palatable, is the way it seems to be.
All right, let's move on here. Adder in the SOR chat room on Spreaker is asking, could Earth be in a zoo and the cage keeping us from contacting others?
Well, technically it could be, but it's not. Okay, this isn't a quarantine zone. It's not a zoo. If it were a quarantine zone, there wouldn't be so many abductions. Okay, it would be first and foremost. That's one of the biggest issues. So, no, is this a zoo? No. Is it a library? Absolutely. There is a staggering amount of data stored inside the physical planet and denizens, as well as the neural net.
Right. Why do a lot of people think that then? Why do they think that we are being shut down from those above? Is that all having to do with the fact that we haven't gone back to the moon?
Well, they believe we haven't gone back to the moon. They're wrong, but that is what they believe. And of course, if we've been shut down, it makes it so much easier to believe that's the problem. The only problem is we've been back to the moon. But that is absolutely one of the viable reasons for people getting that thought in their head. And, the reality behind it from my experience is that the people that usually propagate that thought simply haven't been able to prove for their own sake, in a way that they were willing to accept, that these things exist, and therefore it's easier to say that we don't see them. Okay. That's how that comes about. That's ultimately that's what it feels like from my standpoint.
Yeah, I can see where it's feeling that way for you. I want to change direction here, as I want to go back to disclosure for a minute and talk a few minutes here about disclosure from the alien side. Because a lot of people have asked you over your time on this show and on other shows that we have done, is why don't the aliens just force it? Why don't they land on the White House lawn? Why don't they do this? Why don't they just make their presence known?
Well, there's two reasons, two very big, overwhelming reasons. If we go, if we go the route of the overall disclosure, okay, if they just want to watch society itself, past experience from their standpoint has proven that kind of disclosure usually results in societal collapse. That would be the big one from that side of it. The secondary one, from a more selfish standpoint, is that if they were to come out and say we really are here, then all of their studying of the natural evolution of the planet and of the peoples are, one of the biggest issues is it would alter the natural evolutionary path. Therefore, from a scientific standpoint and from a socioeconomic standpoint, it would be a complete disaster regarding the data they're trying to collect. And they certainly wouldn't have any point in doing the evolution, in doing the studies anymore. Well, yes,
let me ask you this. I mean, this could really stop people from doing some heinous things or having heinous things done to them by these evil aliens, or let's just say artificial intelligence, maybe, I don't know, in regards to who are taking people and giving them very negative thoughts about this.
Much as I agree with the comment that it could do that, it doesn't. And here's the problem. Okay. First of all, it would absolutely decimate the issue of them watching the evolution. You got to remember, mankind is at that barrier point where it's on the verge of either pulling together as a unit or tearing itself apart. But this is if you were a volcanologist, meaning you study volcanoes, okay, and you see a volcano on the verge of erupting, are you going to put a pressure release valve in to stop it from erupting if you want to get the data on the eruption? Are you gonna blow a vent to let the pressure out? Okay, that's what you're looking at from a xenosocioeconomic standpoint. So now that would be the first problem. The second problem is this. If you actually do that, if you come down and announce your presence to the world at large, it won't stop the abductions. It won't stop the anger, because now what you'll have is the people that are hanging on to the issue of my ancestors were abducted by you people and were put through horrendous tests. We want compensation. Okay, is this likely to happen? It's happening on Earth, and we're not dealing with the off-worlders from that standpoint. Will it perpetuate itself even in today's world, in the Galactic Consortium? They still have the same kinds of problems, where these types of wars, these types of heinous activities still occur. This is why I tell people that the off-worlders are not better than man. They've just got better toys.
All right, let's move on here. And Corey's like, Dave, can you ask if Keith is coming to the Paracon? Yes, Keith will come to the Paracon. He's just got to figure out how he's getting there and where he's staying. But yes, Keith will be at the Paracon, the first annual Caribou Paracon, brought to you by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers, September 28th through 30th. You can get your tickets at questers.ca, which I highly suggest you do. Let's go over to Andrew on Twitter. He's saying, Keith, what do you think, or what do the aliens think about Donald Trump's Space Force?
Well, it was bound to happen sooner or later. If you're asking, are they worried about it? Not even closely. Not even minorly. However, from their standpoint, especially in certain circles, they look at it going, well, he's kind of behind the eight ball, because there was already, according to them, there was already at least one and possibly two other people that are not as economically positioned, i.e. they're not the President of the United States, that have already done the same thing and launched into outer space. So this is just another business venture in their eyes. A natural one. It was bound to happen. But there's talk about the caution about calling it a space force, because the moment you put military in outer space, the military from outer space, which are much more adept at it, are going to see you as a potential threat, and they will test limits. So it's very necessary that if he's putting one up, according to what they're looking at, he is going to put it up there. But it is very necessary to couch it from a scientific focal point, not a military one. Because if he turns it military, it will, in all likelihood, draw some complications.
What are those complications?
Well, not the least of which is if you put a military force up there with an aggressive leader, they will pick a fight by nature with whoever is available to prove their strength. Okay, that's one of the biggest issues. Okay, because military, the moment you start putting military, it usually focuses around conquest. They couch it in the term of defense, but 90% of the time they will rapidly change that to a point of conquest, and that will spell a disaster. Okay, that's where the biggest concern is.
So is that a concern for mankind and the future here, or is that a concern for, a lot of times we look at these subjects, Keith, and we think, okay, is this a short-term danger or a long-term danger? What would this be?
It depends. I mean, it's an ongoing concern. It only becomes a danger if it gets acted on in the wrong way. But the moment you have a spacefaring race, automatically there are dangers on that level that have to be taken into consideration. The same as when mankind first put the boats in the water. They started off with boats in the water. The second they put a cannon on it, all of a sudden the whole field changed. Same thing is going to end up happening if they're putting military mindsets into outer space. Okay, there is such a thing as putting defensive superstructures in place. Okay, but if you go in there with the idea of, I'm going out to conquer space, not to explore it, but to conquer it, you're setting it up where it will have ramifications on this planet. Okay, And that is just a sociological reality.
All right. I guess we can live with that, my friend. We can totally live with that. We can work with that one as well.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Well, let's move on here because we only have about 10 minutes left with you tonight. And this is a very powerful show, as we always do with you on this first Friday of every month. And sticking with the Space Force here for a moment here, if we get too far into space or if we weaponize space a little too much, whether it's for Earth purposes or universal purposes, do you think that the ETs will send their ships over to these satellites or whatever they may be up there and kind of give them the warning, much the way they did with both Russia and the United States and the nuclear missile silos back in the 60s and 70s?
Not exactly. I guess along the same lines. Would they let them know that, look, you're going in over your head? Certainly. Are they going to shut it down? Frankly, no, because here's the thing. You set a series of nuclear bombs off in outer space. It isn't going to matter to the planet. You set a series of nuclear bombs off on the planet, and you're going to destroy the database. And that's what they're protecting. So if man wants to blow himself up on a space station, it ain't going to make one iota of difference to them. But they will approach mankind and go, guys, you're going down the wrong road here. You know, they will give, and we are talking about an amicable warning, you know, much like you'd give your child. You know, I wouldn't recommend riding that skateboard down the staircase because it's going to hurt. You know.
I think, though, that they could. And it wouldn't surprise me that every time we seem to get or start acting a little bit tough with our toys, that they seem to, you know, spank us back a little bit. I could see them doing it, Keith.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really boils down to how it goes. I mean, there's a lot of variables involved there. But ad nom, we really do have to clarify this. Some aliens do have extreme compassion for humans. Okay. You know, like, this isn't a question of aliens have no compassion. Some races, they don't understand them. I mean, granted, the vegans have absolutely no compassion for humans' pain because they don't have a pain center. You can cut a vegan's arm off and they won't, and aside from the fact they won't be able to pick something up, they don't register it as a problem. So they have no compassion for pain because they've got no comprehension of it.
Are these the ones who operate on us?
No, usually that's the Greys. This is why the Greys have and this is where you can see the compassion. Greys keep the Nords handy because many times if a human wakes up while they are under the, if you will, care of the Greys, and they get really agitated, first of all, humans are way more powerful than Greys are as far as physical strength goes. So they keep the Nords handy because Nords look human, and usually that helps calm the person down at least a little. But it's the Greys that do most of the abductions and what have you.
Yes, that I did know. And when it comes to the Greys, and I'm curious, are they hired guns? Are they an artificial intelligence? Are they their own species that kind of do the dirty work for all the other species that are out there? What is the purpose?
Well, two factors. One, they are their own species. Okay, they are an actual race, flesh and blood, much like mankind, just a little different. Okay, have some people replicated them and built automatons or built robots that look like them? Certainly. Okay. But their purpose, they are scientists. Okay. The tall grays, when you look at the original Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that end scene where they show all of the little aliens and the one tall gangly one, that is the best picture I've ever seen of both of those lines. You know, both of those, if you will, branches of the Gray Society. The tall gangly ones are the controllers. They're the ones that decide what gets done. The little guys do what they're told. Now, are some of the little guys, are they mercenary, as in will they sell information to whoever they can get the money from? Yes. Okay, but their agenda as a race goes is strictly record, explore, examine, and record.
Very interesting. We got about 5 minutes left with you, Keith. And as we're talking about the Greys, do you see a point where, and you bring up the Close Encounters of the Third Kind scenario, where the tall Gray was in behind the little guys at Team Stump, right there, Devil's Tower, Team Stump. So thank you for bringing that up, Teresa.
Hey, no problem.
I can appreciate that. I can totally appreciate that. Do you see a time where the Greys will be working or intertwining their own work ethic with humans once disclosure happens?
Quite frankly, yeah, I do. You know, I don't, well, in all fairness, they're already starting the process. Okay, so, you know, that's already begun, but I'm presuming you're referring to more of a public venue. Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. But
Yeah, exactly, because that's kind of what I'm thinking, is like, are we going to go, you know, pick up a few things at the grocery store and you know, work in the till, or are these alien Greys? You know, or you go to McDonald's to the drive-thru and you're handing your money to a Grey?
Well, you might have trouble with the modern tills. I mean, the Greys aren't exactly that tall, but you get the idea. But yeah, quite frankly, that kind of interracial, you know, interracial mixing is very probable. Okay, with a little bit of luck, we'll have it in our lifetime, but I'm betting at least in our grandkids.
Do you see a point, though, where there is that interaction? And yes, when the Greys do come here, or when the aliens or ETs, off-worlders, whatever we want to call them, come to Earth, and everything is disclosed, is this where we're all of a sudden going to see an increase or a disclosure of creatures like Sasquatch or Dogman or wood nymphs or gnomes or whatever it is that is hiding on this planet?
That's when you're going to start seeing this sort of thing roll out into the open. Okay, and some of them are going to have complications. Some of them will be seen as a very viable threat, and others will be seen as, so you really were a decent people. You know, I mean, the mix of emotions is going to be on the extreme side. And the best we can do is hope that through programs like yours, that we can get people realizing that the off-worlders are not inherently here to wipe out mankind, or to imprison it, or anything on that end.
I see. We got about a minute and a half left with you, my friend, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show with us. And thank you so much for bringing your knowledge and your understanding of the ET connection to us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and especially thanks to all the incredible questions from the listening audience. Sometimes they really catch me off guard with the depth of the questions they come up with. And in this case, the direction it goes.
Well, I will see you in 2 weeks at the Forest Moon Paracon in Sadro-Woolley, Washington.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
I've already
about
got
that.
my ticket for that one.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. And then we'll see you up here for the Caribou Paracon the week after.
And that is exactly what the plan is at this point.
Excellent. Excellent, my friend. So you take care. We will next talk to you on this show on Friday, October 5th. And I look forward to it, my friend, with another edition of the ET Connection.
And thank you so much again, Dan, for having me, and thanks to everybody for being here.
All right, R. Keith Andrews, everybody. Coming up next, we have The Encounter with Everett Themers. It's Faux News Friday.
This is the winter of our lives. We come to play the final scene. The curtains closing in the darkness. We expose what lies beneath.
It's Friday night, and it's time to enter The Encounter, our news section on Spaced Out Radio, where we get into the weird, the wacky, the WTF of the news of the day. And every Friday, we throw in some fake news, which we call Faux News Friday around here, because we're kind, we're gentle, and we want you to get the truth. So we go out of our way with news director Everett Themer to find some of the best fake news that is out there that people are falling for. See, we educate around here, Everett.
That's what we do.
Exactly, and it's always good to educate our audience because there are people out there listening who, and I've done it, you've done it, fallen for some sort of fake news.
And you know, it's funny you bring that up because the first thing we're going to talk about is something that you and I discussed earlier in the week, and part of it turned out to be fake news.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Not us. We're intrepid reporters, my friend.
But that's part of it. People are, even reporters and journalists, are getting fooled by some of this stuff.
This is terrible.
It happens. It happens so fast. You know, earlier in the week, we talked about the Nike protests.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the photos you saw of the gentleman who started his shoes on fire while he was wearing them.
Yes.
That was fabricated.
No. That hurts my feelings.
Yeah, that was not, it wasn't true. And in fact, it was a stunt by he calls himself a Twitter or internet comedian.
Oh, that sucks because that was a good one. That's how easy it is to get fooled these days, though.
It was, and it does have a little bit of an Australia story behind it too, because the photo of the burned feet, were actually available. The photo was available on a hospital website in Melbourne, Australia. It was part of one of their web pages, and that's where he grabbed it from.
Well, that's just too bad. That's just too bad. My feelings are honestly hurt about this one.
Well, then you're not going to like the next one either, because it revolves around the Nike protests, and there was a story going around on several of the fake news websites that a gentleman went to start his shoes on fire, and he burned his house down.
Yes, I did see that one.
Allegedly, he put them in the garage and he soaked them in kerosene and started them on fire, and it engulfed his house. None of those stories involving that general plot are true. It's on several different websites, different locations. The names have been changed, but none of them are true. There have been no reports of that.
Hey, can we get to one true story for a second? Can I throw a real wrench into this?
You're going to make us deal with facts on Faux News Friday?
I know. But what did you think about Elon Musk smoking a joint on Joe Rogan Experience?
I have two different points of view.
Well, let's hear them.
From the business world, corporate kind of perspective, I cringe a little bit But then at the same time, just looking at it, I can accept it. I think it was okay.
I'm quite okay with it. Number one, he's in California, so he's not doing anything illegal. But from what I'm hearing from some of our audience members is that smoking a joint like that goes against being allowed to have top secret clearance.
Well, that opens up a can of worms then, doesn't it?
It sure does. It absolutely does.
Is that... Let me ask you this then. Do you think he's at risk, if he has any clearances, to lose them? Or do you think that maybe that was just sort of a subtle sign that he doesn't have maybe some of the clearances that people claim he has?
Well, I mean, there was also the claim that he made that he was an alien and his brain works differently.
I think to a certain degree you have to agree, or a certain extent you have to agree, his brain does work differently. Yeah. I mean, you look at all of the things that he's done and the projects that he's put together, he, in some ways, I think, is thinking on a different plane than a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Now, the idea of claiming you're an alien when you're the head of multiple corporations like that, I think that could be a little dangerous.
I agree.
Unless you're an alien.
I agree. I absolutely agree. All right, I just had to get your opinion on that. We can go back to the fake news now.
Good, because this one actually comes from my town.
No.
The town closest to me. And it's rare that anything like that happens, but I had a bunch of people forward this report that there were 2 great white sharks spotted in the Illinois River near Morris, Illinois.
I saw that.
So, the first thing I did was I checked with the sheriff's department and the police department and the parks department, and it was false. In fact, the photo is a photo from, I believe it's down in South America. And this has circulated several times in different places. It was used once in Ohio. It's just a story. It seems to begin on a site called React 365, where you can basically create a news story to prank your friends. In fact, it makes it quite clear on the website that that's what it is. And then people begin to share them and they get spread around. But for about 10 minutes, I was actually very excited because news was happening in our town, or, the town closest to me. And there is a bit of a concern of some things coming up the Illinois River and eventually making it into Lake Michigan, and it's a fish called the Asian carp. So yes. when this kind of came across my desk, I had several people forward it to me. It was a bit exciting. It was nice for us to actually have something to go and research, as opposed to doing everything online and on the phone.
Oh, so you actually put your press hat on.
Well, I drove past the police station and talked to a guy I know.
Well, that's good. That's great reporting. You are intrepid. See, that's why you're our news director. Right there. Proving the skills right there. Right there.
Stopped by the state park right there at the Illinois River for a few minutes and brought myself some shark bait. Had to bring it home, though.
Oh, mother-in-law over?
How did you know? Oh, God, I hope she's not listening.
Oh, me either. Me either. Hey, nonetheless, moving on here. With the sharks, though, wasn't there a number of years ago bull sharks that actually, because they can live in fresh water as well, and they're very, very dangerous to people. Wasn't there one like 400 miles up the Mississippi River that it was spotted a number of years ago?
Yes, that was a legitimate story.
Yeah, I mean, that's why all of a sudden, like, I know great whites cannot survive in fresh water. But that's why I was all of a sudden wondering, maybe it was a bull shark or something like that, feeding on these Asian carp because they are plentiful.
Yeah, but having a great white, if you're going to create a false or fake news story,
yeah,
the idea of having Jaws in your backyard.
Oh yeah,
that's much more impressive. Most people probably don't really know what a bull shark is, or any of the other sharks that would possibly have a chance of doing that. But the great white would be the ultimate shark to create a story like that with.
See, and just because there is a faux news there, and my panic about sharks, and I can feel my anxiety raise, I will never, ever go to that river. Ever. It's real news to me. Real news to me.
It's not. It's not. And I will admit that when I first saw it for a few minutes, the first thing that popped into my head was, finally, we have an animal down here that can kill us. Because you guys have bears and cougars and things like that. And we have Bambi and Alvin and the chipmunks. So
don't you have possums there? Raccoons?
Yeah, they're not going to kill you. Well, unless they're rabid. And even then, we just don't have obvious dangerous animals. So I was a bit excited. I was feeling a bit like Dave Scott for a minute.
Well, hey, you got the hair for it. Let's move on to another fake news story.
This one, we're going to use this example, but it's a prime example of a fish, basically a scam. There's a photo of a girl in a hospital circulating around, and it's one of those, please like and share this, and Facebook and all these different companies will donate $1 for her treatment. And when you see these, whether the treatment is a kidney transplant or dialysis, or there's all kinds of different ones. Right now, the main one is kidney transplant. Don't share them. Don't like them. Ignore them. This is a way for different websites to gain some viral traction. They call it like farming. And what it does is they put these posts out there. They convince people. They play on their emotions to get this post to move across social media. And they use it as a way to boost the value of their social media and web pages so that they can then sell them to marketers.
It's cheap.
It's pretty low class.
Especially when you're taking advantage of people like that. I mean, knowing that people will try and help other people at any time.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, no company is going to donate money or donate really anything based on somebody sharing or clicking or liking something. Now, if there's a campaign, you'll hear about the campaign where maybe, and Musk did it, Elon Musk with the flamethrower. If they get so many retweets, so many likes, something like that, they will do something, but it will be publicized and it will be obvious. When you get one of these going across your news feed that says, oh, like, and somebody's magically going to get $1, it's not true. And one of the things to think about too is, would any of these companies withhold some form of treatment or benefit from somebody because you don't like it, or you don't click on it, or you don't share it?
Would you consider this the new form of clickbait?
No, because with clickbait, the idea of clickbait is you keep clicking to basically continue to see the different advertisements. Part of it is you grab that headline and get onto the website. If you look at it that way, still kind of no. Maybe I'm a little wrong there. I mean, the general idea is just to boost the popularity and get the post to go viral, which, I mean, I guess, fine, you've changed my mind. It could be clickbait. Whatever it is, it's junk.
Weird. Very weird.
There's no reason to feel guilty for not liking or sharing or whatever that random post that comes across your news feed to make you feel bad.
Yeah, I don't like that. That seems cheap. Very, very cheap.
Little bit.
Let's move on to something strange or happy. Happy fake news.
I don't have any happy fake news.
All right, let's get to the next one then.
I'll tell you this. The Democrats are not demanding that Brett Kavanaugh submit to a DNA test to prove he's not Hitler.
What?
There's a story going around that the Democrats want the Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, to submit to a DNA test to prove that he is not Adolf Hitler.
Okay,
And
so he's 100 plus years old.
104.
Okay.
He would have to be 104. This is a story that started out on, strangely enough, a Christian fake news website called the Babylon Bee.
Hold on a second. There's a Christian fake news website?
Yeah.
How do you get what? This is gold. This is just pure gold for this show.
Are you saying that? Are you saying that's better than Brett Kavanaugh having to prove he's not Hitler?
No. Well, I mean, the fact that there is a Christian fake news website, there is nothing biblical about that.
Oh, you should see some of the stories they've had on there. I'm pretty sure it's not run by Christians. Let's put it that way.
Okay. All right. Don't tease me like that. But, I mean, you know, okay, all kidding aside here for a second about Brett Kavanaugh. All right, because I know that's a contentious issue down there. I am really getting sick and tired with today's people throwing the term Nazi around or trying to compare everything to Hitler. You know,
and that's kind of
Hitler murdered 6 million innocent Jewish people. 6 million plus innocent Jewish people. All right? And to associate that term, I think it's a real black eye on society for anybody who throws that Nazi card out. And it's ignorant.
And that's part of why I brought it up, because the comments on this, there are a lot of people, again, and this is why it becomes fake news. There are a lot of people who, A, believe he should be tested, believe he may be Hitler, and that are believing the story. And it's sad and frightening.
But outside of the story, dude, you know, when are people going to grow up? Calling somebody a Nazi is horrible. It's grotesque. You're talking about people back then, during a day 70 years ago, who were holding a gun to babies' heads because of their background. Like, it's sickening. Okay? It's sickening. There are racial comments all over the place, okay, that are disgusting. We don't use the N-word because the fact that it is a horrifically discriminatory term. We don't use other terms because they are absolutely horrific. We've grown up as a society to say the N-word or the, you know, calling Chinese people chinks or things like that. I mean, that's horrific. And to call people Nazis these days, how sick in the head do you have to be?
I think it shows a definite degeneration.
It does. It does. So if you're against the N-word, if you're against other words that are discriminatory to people, whether it's First Nations, whether it's Asian people, East Indians, Sikhs, Muslims, or whatever it may be. Lose the Nazi term. That is just as disgusting. Sorry, I'm getting on a little bit of a rant here with this, but it pisses me off.
That's part of what That's part of what Fake News Friday or Faux News Friday is supposed to be about. I mean, we can make fun and joke with some of these stories, but we tend to forget that some of the fake news is potentially harmful.
It's extremely harmful. You know, I would never look at any of my friends and say, you're acting like a Nazi. It's horrific. It's horrific. Like, people have a short memory. Go read your history books. If you're using the term Nazi these days, go read your history books. It's not that far, and it's pretty damn well documented. And if you don't want to read a book, go to YouTube. Plenty of videos there.
Yeah, I think the truth is it's hard. You would have to go to quite an effort to act like a Nazi.
Yeah.
You know, but you're right. People do throw it around freely. And sadly, like I said, there's that humorous point because we know that there's no way Kavanaugh is 104 years old. And that's the ridiculous part.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people.
Well, dude, up here in politics, Justin Trudeau's right-hand man, Gerald Butts, uses the term Nazi like he's throwing peppermints in his mouth.
See, to me, that would be, in my opinion, that would be totally inappropriate for any government official. More so than anybody else.
Yeah. It's terrible. Terrible. We got time for one more.
Okay. A man in in Texas did not get high on bath salts, cut off his genitals, and microwave them. Just in case you were wondering. This has been circulating the past few days.
Okay.
It started on it's called TVT News website. And this report basically says that this gentleman is in intensive care after committing these acts. And he did not.
Good.
It's not true.
Good.
In fact, it's derived from several other similar stories. It keeps circulating and coming around. And this website, they've basically been known for creating these stories and recirculating stories like, there was an outbreak of diarrhea at a strip club, things like that. A guy went and got a prostitute and discovered it was his wife. Different stories like that. But I think there's a little bit of a cautionary tale here in the idea that these bath salts do make you do some pretty crazy things. And when you look at, again, if you follow the story and you look at the comments and you see what's going on, there are people who are telling experiences of people that they know that are very similar to this or close to this, that are real experiences. Much like the zombie craze, the gentleman in Miami, I believe it was, that got high on these and began to rip somebody's face off with his teeth.
Oh, wow. Grotesque. Dude, we got to get to the thought of the day here. There's some messed up people, people out there making up this crap. All right, today's thought of the day happens every night at this time on this show, where we take a question during the day, post it on Facebook and Twitter, and then read your selections into what you state, because we love the audience participation. Today's thought of the day is, why do you think aliens have such a bad reputation? Let's go over to Twitter first. Mr. CE5 says, you could thank the CIA, the military during the Cold War, and primary the entertainment industry that have created massive xenophobia, fear of the unknown. We have no bases to be afraid of our ET friends. It's all fear-mongering, Dave. Oscar says, I'd say pass the J. And he posted a picture of Elon Musk. Good one, Oscar. Now comes the pain. Says, because aliens are not the norm, it's human nature to be fearful of things that are not the norm. Cynthia jumps out and says, I'd offer candy. The highlight of the day goes to Marty. He says, because their PR department sucks. And we got a greetings from Area 51 card from Mr. Skeptic. Bart L. states, because, Dave, New Coke was their idea. That is brilliant. Lots of brilliancy today, man. Lots of brilliancy today.
I love reading the comments.
All right, let's go to Jade. Some have behaved inappropriately and have proven they are still stuck in a materialistic 3D thinking, perhaps with better tech, but no advancement spiritually. For example, abductions with the goal of hybridization, as well as cruel animal mutilations, totally unacceptable. Chris Cogswell, the mad scientist from Reality Paranormal, all that butt stuff, bad reputation, bad. Gregory, the media is part of it, but then there is a fear of the unknown propagated by the powers that be. And then, of course, those untimely butt probes. What the is that all about? Kelly states, I may be wrong, however, I do not know. I have a bad attitude, and I think it's because I've never had Tim Hortons. So that may be it. I'm almost guaranteeing that. Len, the anal probing, that gets old after a while. Jeff Webster from Haunted Crew of Canada jumps in. It's not the aliens with a bad reputation, it's perceived reputations that gives aliens a bad rep. Most movies, shows, books all paint a horrible apocalypse for mankind if aliens show up. We as a species have no real concrete proof they even exist, yet we fear the worst. Jeremy states, some look really ugly and insert strange things into our bodies. Then Mike says, I agree with Jeremy. The body probe thing is concerning. Gary jumps in because some people make it like that. Colleen says, it's racism. Anything different is automatically bad. Chuck, I think our governments have pushed a lot of it behind the scenes. The reasons are all over the map for it. Justify defense spending, hide black ops, hiding secret aircraft testing, you name it. Gil, we don't know enough about them, so people just presume they are bad. Sarah, because people are mostly jerks. And we'll get to Captain Shirk here. Seriously? An entity pops into my home through the walls and either takes me to his craft, does unthinkable things to me, and zaps me back to my home, or does all of the above in my home without so much as an invitation or, can I buy you a drink? That's just plain rude, unwelcome, and deserving of a heck of a lot more than a bad reputation. And that's where we're leaving it. Mr. Themer, let us know about the encounter.
People can find the encounter at facebook.com/SOR the encounter online for now, but we're going to be moving it over to the news section on spacedoutradio.com.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much. And thank you to our Keith Andrews, who is in the first part of the show with the ET Connection. Keith will be back on Friday, October 5th. Tessa Nicole Thomas comes into the cabin here at SOR headquarters while I go off and find my Zen and my Chi this weekend. It's going to be a good one. Spaced Out Weekend, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, Saturday and Sunday. Tune us on in. We're here for you 7 days a week. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Also, tickets are on sale right now for the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented to you by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 weeks today, that event starts September 28th through the 30th. You can go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now for the event. Our great lineup of speakers is on there as well. A big thank you to everyone this week taking part in our chat rooms on Spreaker, at Twitter, at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, and Dr. Rowe and crew in Revolution Radio. Thanks for sharing the show, telling your friends, on doing your part to make us bigger and better every single night. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you on Monday. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a great weekend. Good night.